friends, and welcome to the end of March. I can't believe that we are at March already. 3 months are down, we're a quarter of the way through the year, but I'm very pleased when I look back on what I've read so far this year that I am doing very, very well. I read 7 books this month, and that's a little higher than usual for me, mainly because I was traveling for part of it. I had about 2 weeks off work and we had a lot of short and long haul travel periods, so I was able to get in a lot more reading. So today we're doing a wrap up of everything that I read through the month, and I have already shared with you my travel vlog through Japan where I read 3 books. And when I was packing the books that I wanted to take with me to Japan, I kind of deliberately chose books that I thought would be 5-star reads. They were my predictions of what would be excellent reads, because you don't want to be taking a book on holiday and taking up valuable real estate in your suitcase that may be an okay book or maybe something that you really don't know what it's going to be like. So I was very deliberate with the books I chose, and the books that I ended up reading was Blackwood's Blue Sky by Eowyn Ivey, Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, and Snow Country. I'm not going to go over those books again now, so please go back and check the vlog from Japan. I'll leave a link below and you can see what my thoughts were on those 3 books. Okay, so on to the other 4 books that I read this month. The first one I want to mention, but I really can't talk about too much, is Violeta by Isabel Allende. I read this as a buddy read, and I really want to go through and debrief with my friend first before I share with you my thoughts. And I have some thoughts on this book. It was something that we both had on our TBR, and for whatever reason we hadn't gotten to it for a while. This is a historical fiction. It is about a main character named Violeta who is born during the Spanish flu pandemic. She's born in Chile, and this book is it's written as though she's writing letters to someone that she really loves. She's 100 years old at this point, and through these letters that she's writing, she shares all of her life history, her regrets, her affairs, her things that she witnessed through the years. It is translated fiction. It's translated from Spanish. But anyway, I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I want to wait until I've talked to my friends. So that is one book that I have crossed off my TBR, which I'm very thankful for. I kicked off the month with My Brilliant Career by Stella Miles Franklin. This was interesting because I started reading this at the same time I was reading The Story Thief. And The Story Thief and this book, they overlap a little bit in time, but they definitely overlap in the sense that The Story Thief references a lot of Australian writers, and that includes Stella Miles Franklin and Henry Lawson. And this book opens with a foreword by Henry Lawson, which was kind of cool. I really, really loved this little preface. As I went on, I saw that the work was Australian, born of the bush. I don't know about the girlishly emotional parts of the book. I'll leave that to girl readers to judge, but the descriptions of bush life and scenery came startlingly, painfully real to me. And I know that as far as they are concerned, the book is true to Australia, the truest I ever read. I wrote to Miles Franklin and she confessed that she was a girl. I saw her before leaving Sydney. She is just a little bush girl, barely 21 yet, and has scarcely ever been out of the bush in her life. She has lived her book, and I feel proud of it for the sake of the country I came from, where people toil and bake and suffer and are kind, where every second sunburnt bushman is a sympathetic humorist, with the sadness of the bush deep in his eyes and a brave grin for the worst of times, and where every third bushman is a poet with a big heart that keeps its pockets empty. That was such a great description, and this was the first thing that I read. I have to kind of agree with Henry Lawson on this. This was such a brilliant read, and it absolutely deserves its place in the canon of Australian literature. It's not possible to talk about the plot and themes of this book without talking about the author, who is a legend in Australian literature. And Stella Miles Franklin was only 16 when she wrote this book. It was published in 1901, and from what I understand, it was received with immediate acclaim. Miles Franklin led an interesting and bohemian lifestyle, and ultimately she bequeathed her entire estate when she passed to establish a literary prize called the Miles Franklin Award. So this book is a coming-of-age story of a girl named Sibylla Mervyn, and the argument is that this is very autobiographical of Stella Miles Franklin's own life, which she stressed was not true. The entire story is anchored by Sibylla, and I have to, if she is a unique character, she is definitely unique, but I definitely saw parallels between her character and other favourite heroines of ours, of Anne Shirley, Jo March, Elizabeth Bennet, and even a little bit of Laura Ingalls. All of these elements that she had, even a little bit of Scarlett O'Hara with her resilience and perseverance. When we first meet Sibylla, and this is written from Sibylla's point of view, when we first meet her, she is one of a few children of a very poor farmer in Possum Gully in New South Wales, I believe. And her mother came from a much better background than her father. Her father was a working man, and he is down on his luck, and the family was quite well off, and now they are not. Anyway, Sibylla is getting on her mother's last nerve, so her mother decides to send her off to her grandmother's house and hoping that her grandmother will sort her out. Sibylla's grandmother's farm is much larger, it is much more affluent, and it has connections to society that Sibylla has not really experienced yet. And so when she gets there, she flourishes. She absolutely flourishes. She is a fan of the arts and writing and plays and all that sort of stuff. And so she is in her element, performing for people, engaging with people, getting to know them and debating with them about things. She's about, I think she's 17 or 16, 17 at this point, and she knows where she wants to go in life, and she is wanting to be in charge of her own destiny. She doesn't want to just be a wife of somebody. There's a lot of commentary around the hardships and economic difficulties in the early 20th century in Australia, which I really enjoyed reading. There's also a little romance. Sibylla is proposed to a number of times and her reaction is always interesting. And the writing is so, so good. It reminds me a lot of Jane Austen in the way that it writes. If you are a fan of Jane Austen, I would recommend this to you. And it really does evoke the beauty of the Australian bush and the tenacity of the Australian battler. The extreme nature that Sibylla has reminds me a lot of Anne Shirley. She is very, oh, whoa, world, and all these sort of things that Anne Shirley would over-dramatise. But this is an example of the writing. This was in the last chapter as Sibylla is reflecting on being Australian. I am proud that I am an Australian, a daughter of the Southern Cross, a child of the mighty bush. I am thankful I am a peasant, a part of the bone and muscle of my nation, and earn my bread by the sweat of my brow as man was meant to do. I rejoice I was not born a parasite, one of the bloodsuckers who loll on velvet and satin, crushed from the proceeds of human sweat and blood and souls. Ah, my sunburnt brothers, sons of toil and of Australia, I love and respect you well, for you are brave and good and true. I have not only seen those of you with youth and hope strong in your veins, but those with pathetic streaks of grey in your hair, large families to support, and with half a century sitting upon your work-laden shoulders. And for my sisters a great love and pity fills my heart, daughters of toil who scrub and wash and mend and cook, who are dressmakers, paper hangers, milkmaids, gardeners, and candle makers all in one, and yet have the time to be cheerful and tasty in your homes, and make the best of the few oases to be found along the narrow, dusty track of your existence. Would that I were more worthy to be one of you, more a typical Australian peasant, cheerful, honest, and brave. Sibylla does not operate at 50%. She is 100% all the time, and I loved her character. I loved this book. It is not quite a 5-star for me because there was a couple of plot points that didn't quite gel for me. But I loved it. The twists and turns, it has that Austinian feel to it, with a little bit of romance and suitors, and she is just trying to be the captain of her own ship. I highly recommend it if you want to understand a little bit more about what it was like in 20th century Australia. It is an incredible book, and it has that je ne sais quoi about it. It is just beautiful. I'm so glad I read it. I was looking for an audiobook to listen to because I had a fair bit of driving happening over the month of March, and I ended up picking up or downloading the third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. I have to say I came for the Gilmore Girls gossip, but I stayed for the 6 decades that Kelly Bishop had in the arts and entertainment arena. She started as a dancer and she was part of the original cast of A Chorus Line, so much so that it was part of her life that created that story. It was fascinating to hear how that began. Like, I am that person that watches a movie and reads IMDb at the same time to find out what is going on, what is happening in the background. I really do appreciate that part of the entertainment industry, the work that goes into these things. And understanding how she got that part, how she got the part in Dirty Dancing, Gilmore Girls, how they came about. I always find that interesting, and I thought Kelly really gave us the information we wanted. She didn't talk about the Gilmore Girls as much as I thought. There was a lot of political things in here. She talked a lot about her beliefs, and I think that might rile people the wrong way. But I think at the end of the day, It's difficult to judge someone's memoir because this is their experience and this is their life. I think if you like a celeb memoir, this is something that you will enjoy. And the audiobook is fantastic. It's narrated by Kelly and she did a wonderful job. It's a very, very quick listen. I really enjoyed my time with it. Okay, now I read Hamnet and I read Blackwood's Blue Sky and I read My Brilliant Career by Stella Miles Franklin. And this, I think, is my favourite book of the month. This is Where the Old Roses Grow by Janelle McCulloch, Vita Sackville West and the Battle for Beauty During Wartime. This was only just released in March in Australia, so just this month, and it is a brilliant piece of non-fiction that is engaging from the start. And it is about Vita Sackville West and other rosarians and gardeners in her area who went to great lengths to preserve old roses during wartime. And I think if you love gardening, roses, history, you will love this. In all honesty, I picked up this book because I wanted to learn more about Vita Sackville West. I had recently read a book by Paul Bangay, who is a very, very well-known landscaper here in Australia, and he was mentioning the books of Vita Sackville West, The Garden, More from the Garden, Flowers. She had a number of books that were created out of columns that she had written for The Observer, I think. And those books are very hard to come by. I don't know why someone is not republishing them because all I can find are actual original editions going for hundreds of dollars. But anyway, I wanted to learn more about Vita Sackville West and her efforts in the gardening sphere, and I came for that. And then I learned so much more. And I love it when a book teaches you things in a really entertaining and engaging way. But I learned quickly that this book is not just about Vita. It is anchored by Vita, her husband Harold, and their home at Sissinghurst Castle. I think it was in 1930 when they decided to buy it and just focus on creating the gardens in this location. But it also includes so much information about other rosarians and other gardeners in England that I had no idea about. And I finished this book with a very, very long list of books that I wanted to read. And something that I found at the very end is that there is an entire bibliography that the author has provided to allow you to read more about these people, read more books by these people, and I thought that was fantastic. So I have a very, very long list of other books that I want to read now. And the connecting thread was that these people were really pushing the envelope in terms of seeking out old roses, and this really talks about the lengths they went to preserve those roses during World War II. It wasn't just the potential of gardens being damaged because of the war itself, and where Sissinghurst Castle is in Kent was directly on the front line. It was known as Bomb Alley. There was descriptions of Vita gardening while bombers flew overhead. Meanwhile, the war roared on. Harold and Vita continued to trim the hedges as Vass had ordered them to do, especially the rondelle. Above them, bombers streamed overhead incessantly in huge formations. And then it talks about how night after night the bombers streamed overhead on their way to attack London. The garden continued to be splattered with war debris, and the fields around filled with parachutes, bombs, and occasionally bodies. Vita tried not to listen whenever one of them fell from the sky and thudded onto the fertile Kent soil. And I was reading this as I was sitting outside and I heard all of these choppers and aeroplanes, and there was a bushfire that was just a couple of suburbs over from us. It was a very, very big fire. It could have been catastrophic. And so there was all these choppers and aeroplanes flying around to drop water, and I'm reading this as I could hear all of that going on, which was very immersive. But so there was the element of the war itself, the physicality of the war, but then there was also the government that was telling people to pull up your flowers and plant vegetables to feed the nation because they were going through a rationing. However, Vita and her compatriots argued that we cannot live on food alone and we need beauty to sustain us. It's a very biblical kind of message that man cannot live on bread and water alone. And that was what Vita was saying, was that you have to have something beautiful to focus on during these hard times as well. Gardeners are innately optimistic people. To plant a seed is to have a hope that it will grow into something, and it doesn't happen overnight. It can take weeks and sometimes months, if not years. So there is an optimism to gardeners, and I really felt that throughout, that these gardeners were like, we're still going to push on and do this. It was a very, very keep calm and carry on kind of attitude that they had. And I love the parallels that McCulloch found between what we experienced through COVID lockdowns and what Vita and her Rosarian friends were going through in World War II. While they are two very, very different things, there was an uncertainty with COVID where we were stuck in our spaces and our gardens really became our only outlet. If you're a gardener, even if you weren't a gardener, I think people started to find a way to be involved in their garden and to get outside and to find beauty in something. And I really enjoyed that element of how gardens and roses can give us such hope in an uncertain time. The writing was wonderful, engaging, so well researched. This is most definitely a 5-star read for me, and I have already started buying books that have been mentioned in here. So that was my March in books. I read 7 books, like I said. Some were great, some were not so great, but it was a good reading month. I'm very, very happy with it. But I am looking forward to April because April is my birthday month, and so I have some plans for me and for books. And I'm looking forward to bringing you along on some of that as well, so keep an eye out. But for now, thank you for joining me as I wrap up March. I would love to hear if any of these are making their way onto your TBR after I've shared a bit about them. Maybe some are coming off your TBR. That seems to be something that a lot of people say when they hear my opinion. They're like, nah, maybe I don't want to read that book anymore. So do let me know below, or let me know what your favourite book from March was. I would love to hear. Thanks again for joining me, and I will see you soon. Bye.